This video is targeted for beginners into procedural modeling with Houdini. I think the best way to demonstrate how to start procedural modeling is to show you how to build different 3D models. In this video, I demonstrate how to build a bottle and make it a procedural asset, which can be used in your game as a prop item or in a simulation. This lesson will be split between two videos. The first video will demonstrate how to create the general exterior of the bottle, and the second video will demonstrate how to hollow out the bottle and add thickness to the edges. I'll also add a cork for the lid of the bottle as well. Okay, I'm going to start with a circle. And this will be the base of my bottle. So right at the bottom part. Now I want the bottom to be facing upward. So I'm going to rotate it. And I'm going to switch this to a polygon. Now this is going to be a closed circle, and I want the subdivisions to have a bit more resolution. So I'm going to turn the divisions up to 24. So the circle is a little more smoother. Now I'm going to throw down a transform node. I'm going to use it to scale the radius of the circle. So I'm going to name this bottom radius. So I can scale the radius of the bottom, which this will be the bottom of my bottle. Now I'm going to copy this. I'm going to make it upper radius or middle radius. It will be the middle part of the circle. Add a new transform node down here. This will be the middle height. I'm going to raise this up. So now I can control the middle circle. I'm going to make this a little bigger. So let me merge this together to give you an idea of what I'm doing. So I have the bottom radius. So I have a circle on the bottom, the middle. So I'm trying to define some key features of the bottle. I'm trying to define them using these circles. So we have the bottom part, and this is the middle. So I can adjust the radius of the middle, making it bigger, smaller. Let's raise it up a bit. Let's have a taller bottle. Now I need a neck. Let's throw down another transform node, connect this over, and I'm gonna make this neck radius. Put the render flag here. Adjust this scale. Look what happens. This is because the pivot is in the middle. If you can slightly see, there's a circle in the middle. I'm going to make the screen darker, and I'm going to turn that off. Let's see. Okay, you can't see that. Maybe lighter. Okay, you can see like a circle right in the center, in the origin. That's the pivot point. That's acting as a pivot point for this geometry right now. So I'm going to move it back to 1. And I'm going to change that pivot point, because right now if I scale this, it's scaling from that pivot point. I'm going to change this. And this is Houdini's expression codes. And what this $sign is indicating is that this is an expression. So CEX stands for is asking for the centroid of this geometry. So the center position of this geometry of the X, the center position, and I want the X component. CEY is the centroid of the Y component, and then obviously CEZ is the centroid, and I want the Z component. And altogether, when we fill them all three in and replace it into the pivot translate, the pivot becomes in the centroid of the geometry. So if you look on the geometry, you see that the point is no longer in the origin. It's moved to the center of this circle right here. So now I'm gonna scale this, and look what happens. It actually scales properly now, the way I want it to. I'm going to merge this together to give you an idea of what I'm doing. Now the center of the neck, I need to raise it up a bit. So let's drop down another transform, put it after the neck radius. Name this neck height. So I'm going to raise this up. So we now have the 3 key components of the bottle. We're defining key features of the bottle. So I don't need this. This was only for visual purposes. We have the bottom and the middle. This bottom and this middle section of the bottle. I need a body for it. I need to connect them together. So in Houdini, there's something called a skin node. So you can connect it together. So now we have a body for our bottle. Now we need to connect the middle part together, or the upper part. Oh, first we need to merge it. We need to merge the 2 sections together. So we want this middle part and this neck part. So let's merge this together. So we want to make the second section of our bottle. So let's add a skin node. So that'll connect that. So what the skin node does is that it connects points from 2 different geometries. It'll connect all the points together. So in order for this to use the skin node properly, you need the same amount of points on both geometries. So this is our first geometry. This is the bottom one. And this is the midsection of the geometry. So the 2 circles, they obviously have the same number of points because they're derived from the same circle that we derived up here. So that isn't a problem. And then all we did was move this middle one. All we did was raise it up. So it's not rotated or anything. And then we added the skin node. What the skin will do is connect the points together using these lines. So if we look the front view, these lines are perfectly straight. So I'm going to show you one more thing. If the bottom circle is ever twisted in some kind of way, it will twist the skin around it as well. So if I rotate this, you can see that the skin rotates with it. Now if I rotate it like this, you can start to see that these lines are being twisted with it. So all I'm doing is rotating this bottom face, and I'm just rotating it like this in a circle. The skin, it does this to the skin. These lines are being connected between these points in a certain way. The skin node pairs up points from both circle geometries by corresponding point numbers and creates new edges for the pair of points to generate new skin faces we see here, which is our body. There are many different ways to use the skin node, but I'm only using the default values for the skin node right here. This geometry and this geometry. So these 2. And then the skin, the lower skin over here, and then we have our upper skin here. So let's merge this together. Then we have our neck. The neck's over here. Then we have this. So we need, the bottle has a neck on the top where we pour liquid out of it. So I'm going to put down a poly extrude. And I'm going to extrude this neck part. Then I'm going to drag this over. There we go. So it's starting to look like a bottle. The main shape of the bottle. So I'm going to make this a little thinner. Let me lower this a bit. Lower this extrusion a bit. Okay. So we have the main shape of the bottle. As you can see, the bottom, it's missing a bottom. So it's not airtight. There's a hole on the bottom. Now that will bring us to the normals. Now I'm going to highlight this. This is what I need. I need to merge this face with the rest of this. But I'm going to turn on normals for primitives, and I want to see how the normals look like. So all the normals are pointing outwards, which makes sense because that's the outside of the bottle. However, for the bottom face, it's pointing upwards. See that? That's pointing upwards. So in terms of the bottle, like this, that means that that's this. The bottom face is pointing to the inside of the bottle, which is not what we want, because we want all the normals to point outward. So what we do is I'm going to flip this face, flip it so that the normal faces the correct direction. So now the normal is facing downwards, as you can see here. So I'm going to merge this together. Actually, I can just drag this over, merge it like this. I'm going to move this one up because I don't like the lines crisscrossing. I'm going to rename this flipped. So now the normals, all the normals are facing the right direction. They're pointing outwards, including the one on the bottom. Now, we're still not quite there yet. We have the main shape of the bottle, but if I manually move one of these faces, you'll see that this geometry isn't airtight. Okay, let me select the merge. I'm going to come here, cursor, and then select faces. Now I'm going to select the bottom face. I'm going to press T to move it. These faces are not glued together. I would move this face and it makes a hole on the bottom. So it's not welded in at all. It's not airtight. So I'm just going to delete this. So we need to put down a fuse node. What this will do, it will weld all the points together. All the points that are close enough. And you can specify how close it is with this snap distance here. Now usually the default is fine for me. So I'm just going to leave it there. And I'm going to try and move it again. I'm going to come here, select the cursor, face, select this, press T, and move it. Now this time, it doesn't create a hole when I move the face. Instead, it affects the entire geometry. This is what we want. This means it's airtight. I'm just going to delete this. And I'm going to come over here again, the cursor. This time I'm going to select edges, because I want to make a bevel around this middle edge so it looks more like a bottle. So I'm going to highlight one of these edges, double click it, and it'll select the entire complete edge loop around it. Press hover, keep the mouse hovering over the 3D viewport and press tab. Type group create, because I want to group that edge within a group first. I'm going to call it middle edges. I'm going to take this, I'm going to poly bevel it. But I only want to bevel the middle edges. Come here and I'm starting to bevel. I need more resolution here, so more subdivisions. And I want it to be round. So it's starting to look like a jar. The shape of the jar is starting to show. So we're getting there. Let me put a null down. Now it's time to think more procedural, like what parameters can I change in this bottle geometry that will create a new different bottle by simply changing that particular parameter. I need to identify those key parameters. This bottle geometry is made up of 3 key components. The 3 circle geometries that was created at the beginning, making up the bottom, middle, and neck part of the bottle. Those 3 circle geometries are my key components. On the bottom circle, the middle circle, and the neck. So on these 3 components define key features of the bottle. So that's important. I'm going to use these components to make this geometry more procedural. Now I'm going to come up here. I'm going to come to this geometry node, right click it, go to parameters. Now I'm going to come to this wheel here, and I'm going to edit parameter interface. Now you can do the same thing by just coming here as well. But I wanted to detach this window so I can refer to it later on. Now I'm going to go back into this geometry now. When I change, now I'm going to put the render flag back to the bottle. If I change the bottom radius, it changes how the bottle looks like. It changes key features of the bottle. So I'm going to change the middle radius. Now this really changes. So by changing these parameters, I can change how the bottle, really change how the bottle looks like, and create a whole different bottle. Therefore, I'm going to, this is where I start talking about making custom parameters for your geometry. This way you don't have to always enter the geometry node into this context and find the right node, and in order to find the right parameter to adjust it, in order to change this geometry, in order to change how the bottle looks like. There's a better way. We can create a custom parameter here that will appear here on the outside of this geometry. So right here is what we're going to change. We're going to add new parameters here. So all we have to do here, I'll change one parameter first. So we're here at this parameter list. I'm going to add a folder. Click and drag that folder over. And of course it puts it at the bottom. So I'm going to collapse all these first. And I'm going to drag this to the top. And I'm going to rename it my parameters. Or actually bottle parameters. Okay, hit apply. Oops. So I get a new folder here. Now, the first thing I want to create a custom parameter for would be the bottom radius. So I'm going to highlight this node, drag this uniform scale into my bottom parameters, and drop it. I'm going to call it bottom radius. Now this is a float, and I don't want to specify a range. So I'm just going to uncheck that, drag this up, hit apply, and it's here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this, and look what happens. Oops. Change this. So we now have a custom parameter that is very handy. We don't have to go through all this this whole network in order to find the right node, and in order to get to the right parameter to change this. We can just easily have it here. This is sort of like a shortcut. So this is easily accessible here. We don't even have to enter the network. We can just change right here. So this makes it very handy, very procedural. You might be asking, other than the fact that it's a quick shortcut, what other use does it have? Well, later on, you can make a script to create 100 of these automatically. And your script can use these parameters that are handy within here. They can be procedurally made so that they look different for every single bottle. So let's finish creating some parameters first. So we have the bottom radius. Let's get the middle radius. I'm going to drag this in here. Now the middle height, because I can't drag this Y component over here. Like, you can only drag the whole component, like the whole parameter, not just one Y component, but I only need the Y component for the height. So what I'm going to do over here for the middle height is that I'm going to come over here, and you can manually create a parameter. So I want to float. So I'm going to call this middle height. Then come here to the channels. And it says drop parameters here to add new links. Well, I can't really do that. What you can do is drag it over, drag this translation component, drag it over here. Click this. You can actually edit this. If you put your mouse here, go Alt E, it'll bring up the text in a notepad. So I only want this component. So I'm going to delete this. And delete this, and then save it, close it. And you'll notice that this is exactly that. And a good way to test it would be to apply it. I'm going to make this smaller. And come over here and raise the height back up. So it works. It changes this number. So we have that. And I want to group all the radius together and the height together. So I'm going to put a separator right here. I'm gonna put a label here. I don't know, right? Height. I'm gonna close this, close this. It's all there. All our parameters are here. So there's one thing I like to do as well. I like to highlight the nodes that I have linked to. So these all have parameters that are linked to this, that are on here. So if anything, if I need to debug something, it's just easier to get into and start debugging it because it's color coded. Now there's one thing that okay, I can delete this. That was just for visual purposes. There's one thing here. This was not procedurally created. Oh, there's one thing I forgot to add into the parameter list. It's the resolution of our bottle. And put the render flag there. For this circle, everything is based on this circle. Everything started with this circle. And then we created the bottom face, the middle, the neck, and the top part of the bottle, and thus the whole bottle. It's all based on this circle. Now this division of this circle defines the resolution of the entire bottle. If I increase this, okay, I'm going to put the render flag here because that's the next thing I want to get into is this grouping. This grouping this middle edges group was made manually. So it wasn't really made procedurally. So that's something I'm going to get into just in a bit. I'm going to put the render flag in the fuse right before, actually here, I'm going to ignore the beveling and the group for now. I'm going to ignore that. And I'm going to change the divisions of the first circle I ever put down. Now, the resolution of the entire bottle changes. So if I put 0, nothing appears because there's no resolution anymore. Put more resolution, there's more resolution to the whole bottle. Everything depends on that. So I can call this resolution. I'm going to click and drag this down here. All this. Okay, I'm going to accept this. Now, back to this beveling. Now, once I untoggle this, it's going to get messed up. Because these middle edges were selected manually. And every single time I make a change to the bottle, anywhere in the bottle, this selection has to be, I have to redo this selection. I have to recreate this group. So that's not very procedural. So I can no longer use this manual selection in order to create this group edges. The beveling, however, is okay. Once you have the correct group created, the beveling should work fine. I have to find a procedural way in order to create this middle edges group. So let's go get a closer look. Drag this to give more room. Now I'm going to ignore this. I'm going to even disconnect it. I'm going to throw down an attribute wrangle. Connect this. Now I need some way to choose this group. I can first create a group. I can create the group first. I can use this way to create the group. Name it middle edges. But it'll be a blank group. I'm not going to put anything in the group. The group is blank. I'm going to come down here to the attribute wrangle. I'm going to throw down some code. Now this gets really into Vex. I haven't done any beginner Vex videos yet. So I'm not going to go too deep into this code. Well, I will provide this code and post it on a website for your reference and explain it in more detail there. However, I'm going to go over a the basic concept right now, so you sort of get like an idea of how it works. And if you're interested into learning into Vex and getting really deep into it, you can go there and take a look. So the main concept of this relies on point numbers. Now for this circle, the largest number here is 44, but I have 45 points because Houdini likes to start counting from 0. So everything's 0 based. That's something you have to get used to. And when you're coding, is usually the index is based in 0. So there's 45 points. There's 45 points in this circle. Now, the whole bottle geometry is based on this circle. The bottom has 45 points. The middle has 45 points. And the neck has 45 points. Because I never changed the resolution of the circle in order to view all 3 circles. So all 3 circles are here. The middle circle is what I really want to know. I need to somehow procedurally get all the middle points of the middle circle points. I know exactly what points those are. If you look carefully, look at how the numbering scheme is assigned in Houdini. These are point numbers. So every point here has a number. And we begin at 0. So it's 0, 1, 2, 3, and it goes all around and ends at 44. Now let's go to the next one. I'm going to turn on skinning. I'm going to look at the next one. So this 0 here. And I'm going to follow this line all the way up. And I see 45. I got to stop moving the mouse. I'm sorry. 0.0 here. And follow this line all the way up. It goes to 0.45. Now I want to zoom up. 45. 45 is the smallest number in the middle circle. So it starts counting at 45 here. And then goes all the way around and ends up at 89. So what is this telling us is that Houdini always begins assigning point numbers in the same behavior, in the same pattern. It always begins at 0 at this point and goes around. It always counts sequentially around. And then the next circle, it begins at the same point that is parallel, that is moved up. But it's the same point because we know because it's connected here. And it goes around and counts all the way up. And it does that for the next circle as well. So we go to 45, follow this line all the way up, we see 90. And it counts all the way to 134. So it always begins at the same point in the circle. And it counts around, takes a round circle around. So knowing this, just by knowing this, I can write a piece of code that will predict where this middle round, where all the points in the middle circle are by point number. So that's what this piece of code is doing. Just by using that trick. Because we know the divisions in this. And the factors of this division, 45 times 0 to 45 times 1 is the range of all the point numbers of the first circle. 45 times 1 to 45 times 2 is the range of the point numbers of the second circle. So just by knowing that, I know all the edges then. So I can write a piece of code to predict where this middle edge will be. And I can put all that into a group, which is this middle edges group. So let me connect this and see what happens. I'm going to turn off this point number. So let's test this. I'm going to change the circle division. I'm going to change it in over here. So it's no longer messed up now, unless it's 0 or negative. So anything else, other numbers, it works fine. It's no longer messing up like how it was messed up before. We have something more procedural. This video was a very basic introduction to procedural modeling in Houdini, and I actually take this project further in the next video and make it hollow with thickness. In the next video, the 3D model of the bottle will be more realistic and can actually be used to store fluid inside, because it's going to be hollowed out. If you use it in a simulation, or even 3D print it out, or use it in a game asset, it'll be more realistic. Having a hollow inside with thickness, you can actually store something inside. I hope you'll check out the next video, which is a direct continuation from this project. Thank you for watching and sticking to the end.